I am Lou Bank,
I am Chava.
and this is Agave Road Trip in a Box. What does that
The
mean,
tasting,
Chava?
well, that means we travel around Mexico. We collected some of the spirits that we like the most, and we put them in a box for you
No,
to
we
taste.
didn't. That is a
Oh well,
bald-faced lie. We did not travel around
well, wait, 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 wait.
Mexico
Well, we did at some
at
point, and
some point.
that's how we meet these people.
Yes, that's fair.
Okay,
Not
so
necessarily always the producers, but we'll get to that. And so what we're doing here, right? This is this is a tasting kit that was produced in association with our friends at Maguey Melate.
great pronunciation.
Thank you. And so what Dalton and crew do at Maguey Melate is they sell agave spirits directly from the producers to the people in the United States of America who desperately want those spirits. And so
Mhm.
we put together this tasting kit that's just it's I don't even have one of the little bottles because they haven't shipped one to me yet, but it's 10 little 50 milliliter samplers that represent 10 different spirits.
Yes, and they all make sense within each other. It's a two set flights. Is that correct, Lou, or how will you put
Yeah,
it?
we get five
It's
five flights of two. Each
it's like,
flight.
yeah, it's like in an old school dancing place where they used to dance offs. Do you agree with this? These are like dance offs between agave spirits.
Sure, I'm just gonna say yes so we can move on from dance offs. Okay, so here's the deal, right? Either you have the set and you're watching this so that you can taste and follow along with us in the tasting, and then maybe if you're watching it early enough, you can join us for one of the live webinars where we'll be discussing everything that you will have tasted, or you don't have it. In which case, you can go you can go to magamelate.com and you can get your set, or you can go to agavefestival.org and buy your set.
Hmm. And but before we even start talking about the
Hmm.
spirits, we
Hmm.
if you've never done a tasting with us,
Mm.
which I think a lot of people get confused on how we go about this for a number of reasons that we're going to explore later. But the most important thing for us, usually when we start, is how are you going to drink the spirits? And it's not an inconsequential question because we've seen a lot of people that are very savvy in the spirits and
Hmm.
fermented drinks world that have certain preference in drinking other spirits or fermented drinks that doesn't necessarily behave like agave spirits.
Right. And, and I'll say that what we're going to suggest here is exactly that. It's a suggestion.
Mm,
And it's funny, like both Chava and I prefer to do it this way. And it could be that after you try it this way, you don't want to. In which case, hey, you have to be an adult if you bought the kit. So you're an adult. You should go ahead and do whatever you want to do, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, because yeah, there you go. So let's start.
So let's start. So what should they pour their spirits into, and which ones should they start with?
Well, you mean which vessel or which spirit?
Yes and yes.
Okay, let's start with the vessel. I think the vessel is really important because this might be counterintuitive. Most people that drink spirits will tell you that you need to constrain the aromas and the spirit to be able to taste and well to figure out what it's in there, to get all those volatile compounds inside your nose and or when you're getting a shot.
Shot,
Do
yeah.
we agree with this, Lou, or we don't agree with this?
We don't agree with this, Chava.
Why we don't agree with it?
Well, here's why I don't like a vessel that is shaped like this, right? And this is great for drinking whiskey. And I'm not going to say that whiskey drinkers are wrong. In fact, most of what they're drinking in a vessel like this will be wood aged. And once
Mhm.
you've wood aged a spirit, different things happen to it. But the thing about a spirit is it's a spirit, it's alcohol. And the thing about alcohol is alcohol starts to evaporate as soon as you open it up to the world. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's going to disappear like you fill this up to here, right? It's not going to disappear in an hour. It doesn't evaporate that quickly. But the key is it starts evaporating, and that's a lot of the aromas that you get out of that spirit when you
Mhm.
put your nose to it is the evaporating alcohol. And the problem is what you're going to be drinking in this kit, it's largely spirits that are going to be 50% alcohol or more. And so that's a lot of alcohol. And so it starts to evaporate. And because of the shape of this, it's like it starts to like hang out here. and it bundles up, and then physics tells us that because we restrict the way that it leaves the vessel, right, it gets thinner at the top, that the actual evaporation moves faster through this. And as a result, it's like getting a cannonball blast of unaged spirits right in your face, Chava.
So it's the best way to traumatize someone that it's new to agave spirits. If you want to play a prank on your new friend in agave spirits, this is the way to go, I think.
Well, you're saying a prank, but in fact, if you've got a spirit that you love, right, and your friend says, I'd like to try that, and you're thinking, well, I like my friend, but not as much as I like the spirit, serve it to him in this. Serve it to him. And he's going to put his nose in there. He's like, oh, God, no, I don't know how you could possibly drink that.
Okay, but then I think we it's also important to point out that the vessel we're going to suggest, now we've said which vessel we don't quite recommend,
That
and
we
the
don't
vessel
recommend.
exactly, but the vessel we're going to recommend it's what we usually see in the small towns where we like to go when we travel. And not that one because that's a small version of it. What do they drink out of usually? There you go.
Well, I wouldn't even say usually. I see a lot of just random glasses.
Well, not even glasses, plastic cups. Just whatever
Yeah,
you have at hand.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but often you will see jicaras, which
Yes,
look
and
like gourds and they're not gourds. What are they?
they're not they're species wise, biology wise, they're gourds. No,
No, they're not gourds. It's
it's just
guastacomate. This is a seed
tecomate.
covering.
Yeah, it's a tecomate. But I okay. Well, this has something to do
That's a
with my
whole nother
English. Whatever.
argument. That'll
Yeah,
be a
yeah, yeah,
different.
yeah.
It'll just be a different episode that we'll do later. But yes, this is the thing that we. And, this is a relatively large one. It's the size of my face. And I love the large ones. But then you'll also see tiny little ones that are just like your palm. Yeah. And why are these so good, Java?
Well, what I think they do, it's have you ever walked into a cave and suddenly the outside world disappears and you have the smells and the temperature and the environment of the cave taking over you?
I did. In fact, I did that with you in Durango in January of last year.
Exactly. So I think this is the closest to walking to making your face walk into a cave. And suddenly it's you're observing these vapors of the spirit through
It
every
brings you
possible
in.
part of your face. And it's I think significantly more interesting that if you just restrict it to this little tiny outlet of vapors.
I like that. And so because we can't find jicaras easily up here, I think it was Ron Cooper actually who invented this. People talk about this as the traditional mezcal drinking cup. It's not. Ron Cooper invented this. A gringo invented this because it
Well,
was easier than bringing jicaras everywhere. What?
yes, or you can go for something like this that
A little
it's
more
like
Japanese style.
more Japanese, yeah, which I think also works great. It's closer to the hikara, and it also allows you for a more generous pour without looking like an alcoholic because it looks classy. So
There you go. Yeah. Now, if you don't have, and what's the likelihood? Come on. Well, then again, if you're buying this tasting kit, you might already be a geek. You can also drink out of the Vasa Veladora, right?
mhm.
Like a little candle holder. And there's this, like use a rocks glass, just something that is, at least like wide and doesn't have that bulbous thing. That's the key. Yeah, that's the key. Anything else to add to that before we move on?
Nope, I'm very happy with it.
Okay, so then the question becomes, well, when should you pour it, right? You've got 10 spirits in front of you that
Oof.
you're going to drink. And my great suggestion, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Jeff, but my great suggestion is if you've got 10 vessels that follow the pattern that we just described, pour them all at once. Get that
Yes,
beautiful line of spirits out in front of you. Let them
yes,
open up. Let that room start to smell like 10 different caves.
exactly. And I love that because I do think that these spirits travel from very far away to you. They are very decontextualized. So if you can get your room to start smelling like agave, you get a tiny little bit closer to the place where this was made. So I think it's like taking your room out of the United States and making it travel a little bit closer to Mexico.
Oh, that's lovely. And another thing I'll add is don't empty the whole thing out for this tasting. This is 50 milliliters of alcohol. And as I say, most of it is at least 50%. If you emptied all of it out and you finished it, that would be a half a liter of booze. You would definitely, I don't care what anybody says about agave spirits, you would feel bad tomorrow. So just pour like a quarter of this or maybe a third of it. Maybe.
It depends who you are. It depends how big of a sip you like to take, which takes us to another part where Senor
Let's do
Lu
it.
is very
Jump on that
persistent.
Java.
Mr. Lu, and I fully agree with him for a number of reasons that I don't want to go into detail, but empirically, it has made a lot of sense to me lately. It's take tiny little minuscule sips.
No,
In your words, oh, the
not yet.
smallest sip you've ever taken in your
No, no,
life.
not yet.
Oh, yeah, not even. Okay, yeah, sorry.
First, you have to sniff. It's 2 sniffs and 3 sips. So, what I want you to do, what I want you to do is to pick up that vessel of yours, and I want you to give that a little sniff. How's that smell, Chava?
I love to do both hands
Mm.
and then just
Oh, that's good too. Yeah. It's just as I mentioned, I lost weight, so I want people to see my pretty thin face. It's funny. This actually smells like what I was drinking a few days ago. I guess I haven't cleaned this. So, but you've actually got liquid in yours that you can smell. Now, I want you to set that down, pop your finger into that liquid, finger into your palm, palms together, and then do a little blue velvet action on that. It smells different. Why does it smell different, Chava?
because you have allowed for all the, well, not all of them, but most of the alcohols to evaporate. And what you're getting in there on your hands, it's all that residual different things that are in charge of giving flavor to your agave spirits. So your agave spirits is water, ethanol, a bunch of other alcohols, and some volatile compounds. And what you're leaving behind on your hands is all these things that are minuscule and tiny inside the agave spirits that are responsible for its flavor. And for all of us that we're in love with this and we have traveled to Mexico and have seen how they cook agave, this smells like
It smells like cooked agave.
exactly.
If you were
That's it.
there when they opened up, I don't know which, like in theory right now, you just did that with one of the two Tobalas that are in the first round, right? Either the Tobala by Emmanuel or the Tobala by Sebastian. And so what you're smelling, if you had been at their Palenque, the little home distillery where they made these spirits, on the day that they opened up the horno, the oven, in which they were cooking the Tobala, the kind of agave that they used, it would smell so much like what is on your hands right now.
And most likely you have never smelled something like this before because you've never seen someone cooking agave. It's not very common in the world, and you have never tried this. So this is the closest you're going to get to the raw material where you are right now.
Yeah, but you'll want to come down to Mexico as
You
soon as
really
it's
want to do
safe
that.
and get the rest. Okay, so now we're going to start actually tasting it. So it's not even a sip. What I want you to do, I just want you to drop your tongue into that liquid,
You can
and then
you can cover your mouth so other people don't see that.
I got a pretty tongue, and then whatever's on your tongue, rub on the roof of your mouth and behind your teeth, so that you are clearing your palate. Ah, clearing your palate and preparing it for this beautiful spirit. And then this is where we get to that little half a sip, Java. Take the smallest sip you've ever taken in your life of anything. Tiny, tiny, tiny little baby sip and hold it. Hold it on your tongue to the count of 5 before you swallow it. All alcohol starts life as sugar, and the sugars that are used to make the most complex wines in the world come from grapes, and those grapes are a maximum of Java.
6 months, 4 months,
4 months, 4 months old.
4 months.
If we were drinking scotch, any kind of whiskey or beer, we'd be talking about alcohol made from grain. And grain is that 6 months you're talking about. Like it's 6 months they
Barley,
harvest grain.
corn, yeah,
Yeah. Now, if this were rum, a rum tasting,
right.
we'd be talking cane. And there's some varietals of cane that take up a year to reach maturity, but the vast majority of cane that is used to make rum takes 6 months to reach maturity. We're talking about 6 month old sugars maximum in case of every alcohol you drink. Here, if you're having one of these tobalas, how long did it take for these tobalas to reach maturity, Chava?
Around 12 years.
12 years! 6 months to 12 years? What's the difference between those two, Chava?
That's a lot. Let's put it
11
a
and a half
lot.
years, Chava.
Yes, 11 and a half years.
But what does it mean? What does that difference mean, Chava?
This is a contentious answer, but technically, if you're just talking about the sugars, absolutely nothing.
And yet, are we just talking about the sugars?
Well, no, because otherwise
Oh,
we will be talking about vodka maybe, and we're not. We're talking about no, because we'll be
I don't
talking
know.
about 99% mix of ethanol and water. And no, here we're interested in all the other residual stuff that you can smell and are left back on your hands.
So why is there so much more residual stuff in a 12-year-old Tobalá than there is in a 4-month-old grape?
It's a difficult discussion, but the thing is, you have 11 and a half years of information of the environment, of a very hostile environment. Because let's remember, grapes, sugarcane, all these other things you mentioned, they live very pampered. People cater to them. They go and they throw pesticides when different insects come across them to try to kill them. They water them every day, blah, 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 blah. Agaves are sent to the world, left free, and they come 12 years after if they're lucky and they're still alive. So you're chasing all this struggle of the agave to be alive, fighting with the environment, with crazy sun, with crazy rain, with all of this, and all these bioweapons that it has developed to defend
That that are,
itself
that are
from
basically like chemicals and stuff inside the plant, natural chemicals.
all this kind of crazy stuff that happens in that. That's what we get to taste, and
And
that's
that and all that crazy stuff that's not in things like grapes and sugarcane, all that crazy stuff translates into aromas and flavors in these beautiful spirits. So that half a little sip on your tongue that we want you to hold there for the count of five, that's because your palate is not used to the complexity of these spirits. And so we want your palate to get used to it. If you held it to five and you swallowed and it was hot, well, the next tiny little sip you take, hold it to seven, and then the next to nine until it's not crazy hot. Eventually, what your palate's saying it's hot to you, but really what your palate is saying is, I don't understand this. I'm not used to this craziness. That's what your palate's saying. So take this next third sip, this tiny little half a sip, and this is the only way that we drink this stuff is these tiny sips held on the tongue, and the smaller the sip that we take, the bigger the flavor. The more sips we take, the more our palates start to recognize these different layers of complexity, and the more we get out of these spirits.
yes. And I think just as a last word of advice, yeah, you're gonna see something in this box called puntas, and that says 75 ABV. Whatever we just said right now, try to do that
Times
like
10, or I guess divided by 10. Like
divided
the,
by 10 when you
yeah,
approach that.
yeah.
So just a disclaimer, piece of warning.
And to that point, if you don't have a big glass of water with you, you might want to go get one.
Okay, so I think this is great. I think everybody's now ready to start drinking.
Okay, so we're going to abandon this video and we'll see you in the next video.
Okay, great.